This is the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd. If you're looking to generate wealth and passive income in the lucrative world of mobile home parks, you're in the right place. You'll discover solutions to the common legal and operational pitfalls and how to optimize parks to maximize income. Your host is in the trenches. He's a real estate attorney, financial analyst, and mobile home park investor and operator. Now, let's turn it over to Ferd.
Welcome back, Mobile Home Park Nation. Today, in this episode, we're going to talk about a little dirty secret, and that is basically do not let in bad actors, bad people. How do you decide who's a bad actor, who's a bad person? Well, you can't discriminate. You can't say because they're white, black, purple, orange, yellow, or green. You got to look at some sort of objective tenant screening procedures, tenant screening measures, okay? There are a couple ways to do this. A lot of people do the old, like, computer-generated test. You look at Rent Manager or some other service that says, hey, their credit score was 600, they have no felonies, they have no evictions, boom, they're in. That's definitely efficient. It's fast. You can probably get the results in merely minutes. Another option is to go with a company that actually does the screening. We use a company, they're out of the St. Louis area, called Landlord-Tenant Services, and Carla is the owner of that company. They're really solid. They're going to be slower, but they're going to be more thorough. They actually do things like call the last landlord. Call 2 landlords ago. Why do they do that? Well, it makes some sense, doesn't it? If the last landlord is looking to get rid of Johnny Deadbeat, and you call him, he's going to say, oh yeah, Johnny's great. Oh, don't let him leave. He's been so awesome. And they're not going to be honest and truthful. But 2 landlords ago, they have no skin in the game. They're going to say, oh my gosh, Johnny Deadbeat was the worst. I would never do it again. Okay, makes sense. They also ask questions like, so let's say, for example, your home rent is $800. If the person has a false alibi or a false landlord or reference, that person's not going to know all the facts. They're going to know, yeah, this guy lives with me. I've had friends, like I had a friend, this is kind of crazy, a really good buddy of mine. I was his best man at his wedding, actually. And he had a little downturn in his career there for a minute. And he's like, hey, I'm applying for this job at an IT company. And I told him that I was like supervisor of IT at a different company, and I have like all these certifications and degrees and stuff, and I listed you as a reference. Can you just tell them it's all accurate? And I was just like, dude, no, I don't want to be in the middle of this lie. This is crazy, and it's not gonna work. Even if I lie for you, like, you're gonna last like 2 days at this company because you don't, like, if I say, oh, I'm a brain surgeon, and they give me the first brain surgery, and I'm like, oh crap, I was actually an accountant. This doesn't really carry over. Like, that's what he was basically trying to do. It made no sense, but I got out of that one. But tenants do it all the time. They say things like, oh, I'm a great tenant. Call my buddy. You call their buddy. So what Landlord-Tenant Services does is they know the applicant wrote down $800 for rent, which is probably accurate, and they'll call the, quote, pretend landlord, and they'll say, hey, is John Smith your tenant? Oh, yeah, John, he's the best. We've never had a better tenant. Oh, and he's paying $9.75 every month on time? Oh, yeah, like clockwork. Boom. Caught him in a lie. Because the real landlord would know. They're not paying $9.75. They're paying $8 or $8.50 or whatever the number is. Okay? It's a racket. It's a scam. So there's something to be said for the personal touch. That goes for employment background checks, for landlord background checks, for personal references. We include in our application things like, please identify 3 people who are an emergency contact. I consider non-payment of rent an emergency. So if you call that person and say, hey, John, let's use an emergency contact. In the event that he can't pay rent, are you willing to cover his rent? What? No way. John's a deadbeat. John would never pay rent. I'm not covering that. Get that off my list. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, that tells you something, right? So you have to be cognizant of FHA, fair housing, local and state laws. You can never be discriminatory, but there are some strategies that, frankly, can help enhance better than the computer, in my opinion, despite being less efficient from a speed perspective. The key is just to be fair and uniform, and the way you do this is you write down your tenant screening procedures. Anybody that goes to iTunes and gives me a 5-star review, I'll send them this is not legal advice, this is non-binding. I'll send them a copy of some generic tenant screening procedures. Those tenant screening procedures, I think, are good. I would almost use them in my company, if you know what I mean. So have them in writing, review them. You should have annual meetings for your LLC or your company, and these minutes will reflect which are among other things, which your tenant screening procedures include. And what we do is say, hey, proceed through each step in order until an applicant is rejected or accepted. They get rejected, then just move on. So, step 1, always treat potential residents without discrimination and fairly in compliance with all laws. It's pretty obvious, right? You didn't have to pay big bucks for that podcast. Okay, number 2, require the interested individual to fill out the application. Duh, makes sense. There's some sub-categories here I'm not going to go through in the interest of time and brevity, but I think you get it. Make them fill out the application. Boom. Number 3, collect the application fee. We charge $50 per adult. We make $0 on that. That goes to LTS, right? That's just their fee. We have an online link. It's an online application. They pay them direct. We're not even in the business of collecting that money. We used to collect the cash and pay with a receivable, or payable, I guess, and it was a pain. We just now do it online. If somebody doesn't have the IT capability, you help them out. You walk them through. We've got a lot of tenants that are very senior, very foreign, that do not have English as a first language, and you got to walk them through it. The next 4th step is you review the application and see if they'll pass the income requirements. I mean, if they're like, hey, I'm going to apply and I have no income, I'm homeless, I just want a place to live. It's like, we can process this, but I just have a pretty good feel you're going to make no dollars. No dollars means no passage. Okay, sorry guys. And some people say like, hey, I've been in the room with the guy one time actually, and he's like, I've got a little bit of a criminal background. I'm like, okay, what is it? I'll let you know. I mean, you can apply. I'm not going to discriminate against you, unless the law allows. And he's like, I'm a sex offender. Is that unit by the playground available? I kid you not. He said that, and the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I was just like, there's salvation in Jesus, in the next life. But at this moment, I was like, dude, you cannot have that. You cannot have a second chance at my mobile home park, because it's pretty scary. And I said, sorry, I'm going to save you $50, dude. You're not going to get approved. I am allowed, not that all sex offenders are irredeemable and bad people, but I have an obligation and I think a moral responsibility to protect, among others, the children in my communities. And the guy referenced, can I have the open house by the playground? I was like, dude, you're gone. And it was really awkward, to be honest. But, you can do that. You can discriminate on that. That's the only thing you discriminate on. You can, I review the application for factors likely to lead to rejection. We still submit them. But, if the rental price is greater than 35% of gross income, it's going to be hard for your debt-to-income ratio. We look for things like violent felonies in the last 10 years, drug-related felonies in the last 10 years, other crimes that put others at risk, like sexually related or child sexual-related convictions. Bankruptcies are an issue. Garnishments, collections, other credit issues, they're an issue from a financial feasibility standpoint. And we submit the application to the background check for the credit and criminal check. They contact employers, references, prior landlords. They verify income expenses. They verify assets and liabilities. They look at the credit score. And we get a recommendation from LTS. We evaluate the recommendation and the report from the company, including those aforementioned items, and then we make a decision. Because there is some quote subjectivity in this, but it's not really that subjective. I have no reason to reject you if you meet the criteria. Like, why would I? I don't care if you work as a stripper, as a teller at a bank, as an engineer. If you meet the income and you meet the criminal recommendations, I don't care. You're approved. Okay, I'm not here to judge people on that. But you got to look at the report, right? And then sometimes you discuss it with the provider, with the customer, and get more clarity. Sometimes it'll say something that's like, this looked like you were charged, but it was potentially dismissed. What's the deal? And you dig a little deeper. And if they're short financially, you sometimes consider potential co-tenants or co-signers. You also, evaluate whether there's a requirement to notify the applicant of rejection. Typically, you should notify the applicant, like, you were rejected. you're not really required. Now, I don't know in every state and every city, but in general, you're not really required to say you were rejected because you're a sex offender. You were rejected because you have no job, whatever it is. You used to say, yeah, I, management, hereby have reviewed your application in total globally for criminal credit, eviction, and other applicable reasons, and we've decided not to offer you occupancy. End of story, right? And if they make that, if they pass that, you offer the lease to you basically accept the applicant. You offer them a lease. If they accept it, which they most of the time do, but sometimes they just ghost you. And if they actually accept it, then you collect the deposit. Security deposit, I like to collect 2 times rent, but some states only allow you 1 month. Sometimes you get a month-to-month lease, it's only 1 month, it's 1 year. You gotta look at your state rules, but basically collect the security deposit and collect the first month's rent. Execute at least 2 copies of the lease. Give them a copy. You keep a copy, right? And then allow the move-in only after the collection of the deposit, the rent, and execute the lease. Then give them the standard under leasing documents, the rules and regulations. This is before they sign, by the way. The rules and regs. If there's some sort of acknowledgement document received, like a lead paint disclosure, or some other Department of Public Health, the move-in, move-out checklist, these sort of things. Give them all that. Sign the lease. Take their money. Deposit in your bank account, give them the keys, make sure they got their utilities in their name, and you're off and running. But again, the key is to have written, legal, legitimate tenant screening procedures, which may be as simple as the robot does it for us. But if it's not that simple, then that's okay, but just recognize the pros and cons of that. So ultimately, it is immensely better to reject a bad tenant than to accept a bad tenant, have to evict them later. We turn down, I don't know the percentage offhand, but I would definitely say it's more than half. So just for reference, we reject more than half of our applicants. And I would much rather sit there for a month of vacancy than go through somebody that's going to be there for 4 months and quit paying and then trash the place. And I think everybody gets that in concept, but in practice, I see people all the time. My dad used to be part of a landlord association in Illinois, and they had some procedure that was like, we got our own little blacklist. Oh, John Smith used to live with me. Don't rent to Jack Smith or John Smith or whatever. Blah blah blah. Like, you guys can't do that. That's totally discriminatory. You can't just create your own ad hoc off the book blacklist. And they wouldn't budge on that. So Dad eventually left that group because he didn't want to be part of that process. And really that theory, if you will, on life and on judging people. But there was some fruits to it that you could protect one another, but it was an illegal process. Ultimately, you need to have processes, write them down, implement them fairly on all fronts. Be prudent, be wise, and all will work well, right? Till next time, be smart, be safe, be legal. God bless.
You've been listening to the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd Neiman. Ready to learn more? Go to www.themobilehomelawyer.com for free resources and materials to help you succeed. If you love the podcast, go to Apple Podcasts, give us your review, and subscribe today. Thank you for listening. Neither the Supreme Court of Missouri nor the Missouri Bar reviews nor approves certifying organizations or specialist designations. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements.